Stories of alien abductions are as old as time itself, and they show no signs of stopping anytime soon. Some people believe the aliens are coming to take us away for experiments, while others think that they're here to help guide us to the next level of human evolution. So whichever you believe, there's no denying that the idea of alien abductions is both fascinating and terrifying at the same time. So let's take a look at 5 more alien encounters that you may not have heard of. Before we begin, this is the second episode in the series, so be sure to watch the first one if you'd like to hear about others who've had alien encounters. Harold Dahl. In the summer of 1947, Harold Dahl was out on a boat with his son and some other men when they saw 6 strange objects in the sky. Dahl, who was the only one to get a good look at the object, described them as being like saucers, with cups upside down on top of them. The objects made a loud noise and emitted a noxious gas that made the men feel sick. Dahl reported the incident to the US Air Force, but they were not able to offer any explanation for what he had seen. Dahl's story is just one of many reported UFO sightings in the late 1940s and early 1950s, a period of time now known as the golden age of UFO sightings. In addition to Dahl's encounter, there are also well-known cases like the Roswell UFO incident and the Kenneth Arnold UFO sighting. These cases, and others like them, led to a surge of public interest in UFOs and extraterrestrial life. Despite the public interest, however, the US government was largely tight-lipped about UFOs during this period. In 1952, the CIA even went as far as to create a secret program called Project Blue Book to investigate UFOs and determine whether they pose a threat to national security. Project Blue Book eventually concluded that most UFO sightings could be explained by natural phenomena or human error, but the project was not able to completely dispel public interest in UFOs. The Harold Dahl UFO encounter is just one example of the many strange and unexplained sightings that took place during the golden age of UFO sightings. Betty and Barney Hill. The Betty and Barney Hill case, also known as the Hill case, is one of the most well-known and publicized cases of alien abduction. Betty and Barney Hill were both driving home to New Hampshire from a vacation in Canada when they saw a strange light in the sky. After realizing just how unusual it actually was, they decided to pull over to take a better look. With the help of binoculars, they were able to see that it wasn't just a light, but an unfamiliar object. They kept driving, continuing to look up, but the object made no sounds whatsoever, and it landed in the middle of the highway, blocking their path. That's when they saw 8 humanoid-looking figures, and they realized that they were being followed by a UFO. They tried running back to the car, and apparently started to experience a vibrating sensation and beeping sounds all around them, which led them to go unconscious. They were abducted by aliens, or at least that's what they claimed they were. Once they were awake again, they realized that they were 35 miles further from where they last were. They had no memory of anything, and even noticed their mind wasn't working the same as it used to, as if it was tampered with. Their clothes had weird rips and residue all over it. The Hills underwent hypnosis to try to remember what happened during their abduction, and this story has since become one of the most famous alien abduction cases in history. The story about their abduction is fascinating but chilling. In summary, they claimed they were taken onto the UFO, where they underwent a series of medical examinations by the aliens. The aliens also apparently communicated with them telepathically, telling them about their planet and why they had been abducted. After undergoing what seemed like hours of tests and questioning, the Hills were finally returned to their car and released. All of Betty's personal notes and tapes belong in the collection that now belongs to the University of New Hampshire, and her alien abduction story with her husband is one of the most famous cases of its kind. There still isn't definitive proof that the Hills were actually abducted by aliens, but the story continues to fascinate a lot of people, even though it happened 60 years ago. Travis Walton. In 1975, Travis Walton was working as a logger in Arizona when he was allegedly abducted by aliens. Walton and his co-workers were finishing up their shift when they saw a UFO hovering above the forest. Walton, curious about the strange object, got out of the truck to take a closer look. The next thing he knew, he was waking up in a hospital-like room with several small gray aliens surrounding him. The story made national headlines and sparked a massive investigation. However, many people were skeptical of Walton's story and thought that he made it up. So what really happened to Travis Walton? Was he really abducted by aliens, or did he make the whole thing up? The evidence for Travis Walton's abduction is largely circumstantial, but there are some interesting pieces of evidence that suggest that something out of the ordinary did happen to Walton on that fateful day in 1975. One piece of evidence is the fact that Walton passed a polygraph test that was given to him by an experienced examiner, Leo Gerke. Gerke said that Walton showed no signs of being deceitful or lying when he was answering the questions about his abduction. Another thing to consider is that there are eyewitnesses from Walton's co-workers. All 5 men who were with Walton on the day of the incident passed polygraph tests and stuck to the story that they saw a UFO and that Travis was abducted by aliens. There is also physical evidence found at the scene of the incident. Investigators found scorch marks on the ground where Walton was last seen and strange markings on trees in the area. Some people have suggested that these scorch marks and tree markings could have been left by a UFO. Travis Walton has been adamant that he was taken on board an alien spacecraft, despite how much time has gone by, and his story has never changed either, even when a ton of different people were skeptical of him and went as far as ridiculing him. Is the Travis Walton alien abduction story fact or fiction? There is certainly enough evidence to suggest that something strange did happen to Walton on that November night in 1975. What do you think? Kelly-Hopkinsville. In the early evening of August 21st, 1955, something very strange happened in a small town in Kentucky. The incident began at around 7 p.m. on August 21st, when Billy Ray Taylor walked out of the farmhouse to get some water from a nearby well. Suddenly, he saw a creature peeking over a hill near him, and he ran back into the house to tell the others what he saw. At first, everyone thought he was joking, but then they all heard something scratching at one of the doors. When they looked outside, they saw several more creatures lurking around. For the next few hours, these creatures kept trying to get into the house. They peeked into the windows and doors, even tried to attack some of the people inside. The witnesses said that these creatures were about 3 feet tall, with large eyes and long fingers. They made no sounds as they moved about, and they seemed to be afraid of the light. In total, there were 11 people inside the house that night, 8 adults and 3 children. They all claimed to have seen these strange creatures at one point or another. Bullet holes were found in several places around the property, but there was no signs of any blood or bodies. The police searched the area, but could find no traces of these creatures, dead or alive. To this day, no one's quite sure what happened that night. Was it an alien encounter, a hoax, or something entirely different? What do you think? The Kids of Flatwoods. It was a dark and stormy night, or at least that's how the story goes. A group of kids in Flatwoods, West Virginia, claimed to have seen a UFO crash into a nearby hill. As they got closer, they saw what they described as a monster with a glowing green face. The story made headlines across the country, and to this day, people still try and figure out what the kids saw. On the night of September 12, 1952, brothers Edward and Freddie May, along with their friend Tommy Heyer, were playing outside when they saw a bright light in the sky. They called for their friend, Kenny, to come to check it out, and they set off towards the light to investigate. As they got closer, they realized that the light was coming from behind the hill. They could also hear a hissing sound. As they crossed the hill, they saw what looked like a large object crash into the ground, and then they saw the monster. The creature was about 7 feet tall and had a glowing green face. It had no eyes, just 2 slits for a nose and a mouth that appeared to be filled with razor-sharp teeth. The boys were so terrified that they ran all the way back to Kenny's house to get his mother. When Kenny's mother came out to saw the creature, she described it as like a big ball of fire with a long neck sticking out of it. She also said it had 2 arms that ended in claws and made a hissing sound when it moved. The group watched as the creature floated up from behind the hill and disappeared into the night sky. The next day, news of the sighting spread like wildfire. People came from all over to try and get a glimpse of the monster. The sheriff even came out to investigate, but found no evidence of anything unusual. A few days later, Air Force personnel arrived and interviewed everyone who had been there that night. They concluded that the bright light that the kids had seen was most likely an optical illusion caused by swamp gas reflecting off of Venus, which happened to be visible in the sky that night. But even today, people are still trying to figure out exactly what happened that night in Flatwoods. Was it really just swamp gas? The truth is out there, and it's time for all of us to face it. These alien encounters may just be the beginning of something they're trying to tell us. Or on the flip side, it could just be our imagination running wild, with the mind creating scenarios that never existed. Until we have some hard proof that aliens have interacted with us in some way, all we have are these stories to remind us that we may not be alone. Thanks for watching our Late Night Top 5 channel. We're a new channel and would love to have your support by subscribing, liking, or simply dropping a comment down below. To watch more interesting late night videos, click the links to continue watching more.